The Oklahoma Sooners 2024 recruiting class is just getting started. Michael Hawkins, another domino falls. We'll talk about that and some spring ball takeaways on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/college60 and use code college60 for 60% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/college60. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. And Josh, just got to say thanks for holding it down on the Michael Hawkins episode yesterday. It was a fantastic listen. If you guys didn't get a chance to check it out, make sure you go back and watch yesterday's episode. Just a lot of really great takes and just good overall understanding of kind of where the Hawkins situation leads Oklahoma and what's coming next down the pipe, because man, that's an important domino for this recruiting class to drop, Josh.
No doubt. Yeah. Now you got two in the class. And though we thought that was going to be a domino that drops, it's recruiting, right? And so there could be a surprise that maybe you weren't expecting. Something could change late. So even though we felt confident about it, it's recruiting. And you're talking about, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids making collegiate decisions at times. And it doesn't always wind up where we think it's going to wind up. This one did. And it kind of sets the table up, which I'm curious to get your thoughts, what it means for Oklahoma, John. But first things first, let's not bury the lead. Are you feeling okay? Do you feel better?
I'm better. I'd probably say I'm 80-90% back. So you can put me in. I'll give it my best go. So we'll see how things are going, but need a couple more days to recuperate, and I'll be back to 100% in no time. But Michael Hawkins, man, it's huge. I think it's really easy to understate Hawkins' importance to this recruiting class because of the top 247 drop in his recruiting rankings. To look at him as just a 4-star, or again, top 247 dropped him to a 3-star, and you think that. You look at that and you're like, oh man, he's not that good. He's really good. He's really, really good. This time a year ago, Jackson Arnold was a 4-star quarterback. Prior to playing his junior season, he wasn't really thought of. He hadn't played any varsity football yet, so there was no real recruiting out there. Now, Michael Hawkins, he started since he was a sophomore. There's a lot of tape on him. At some point, or at times, people can get over-evaluated. And recruiting analysts are just like anybody else. They can start second guessing their own evaluations at times, or a move from a powerhouse like Allen, who's pretty well connected across the country with a lot of different people, to a place like Frisco Emerson. That's a program on the rise in the North Texas area that could change people's perceptions of you as well. That doesn't change what we've seen on film with this kid. He's a really good player that does a lot of really good things, both as a passer and as a runner. He just throws the ball effortlessly. I mean, you go back just to the Under Armour Next camp where he won the accuracy award. You don't do that by not being good and not being able to throw the football. So he's a really good thrower of the football. He's really good at running the ball. He's easy, he's an easy mover in and out of the pocket. So it's a big pickup for them. And not only is it a big pickup for just getting the player, but it's just what it does to set you up for the rest of the recruiting cycle, because the quarterback, for better or worse, is kind of the biggest recruiter in the recruiting class. It moves the needle for offensive skill players, offensive linemen, and it can even move the needle on the defensive side of the football as well. It's maybe not as significant as maybe, say, a David Stone commitment might be for other defensive line prospects or linebacker prospects, but it still matters because, again, the quarterback is the unofficial leader of the football team, right? Every football team at every level, everybody looks to the quarterback. The same goes for the recruiting classes as well. Everybody wanted to get to know Jackson Arnold, see what he's about, and make that part of their decision making a little bit. The same is going to be said for Michael Hawkins, but a lot of these guys kind of already know what he's about because he's been on the scene for quite some time. Again, he's going into his third season as a starter at the varsity level in 2023, and he's already been on the 7-on-7 circuit for quite some time. He's a well-known name, a well-known kid. He's done a lot of really good things already. So it moves the needle in a lot of ways. And I think it's just, again, going to be the first domino in quite a few to fall over the next 3-4 months, where Oklahoma really starts to build that recruiting class. Right now, top 50 in the 247 composite team rankings, but that's only going to climb. Like, there's no way this class is going to end up outside the top 10. I'm feeling really, really confident about where they're heading. The trajectory, especially along the defensive line, is looking really, really promising. And that includes my thoughts on David Stone. We already know of all the crystal ball projections for Williams Nwaneri and for Nigel Smith as well. So it's looking like Oklahoma might get a 3-fer on the blue chip prospect front on the defensive line this class. And again, this is kind of big picture stuff, but I think a lot of it, you get the Michael Hawkins commitment, you get that quarterback, you break the ice, with Jeremiah Newcomb, a couple weeks earlier. Now things can start to get going and the ball can start rolling a little bit on the recruiting trail. And things are going to just continue to trend upward for the Sooners.
Well, I'm with you. And the quarterback, like they are in a football game, they become the point man for a recruiting class a lot of times. And I thought it was cool that Michael Hawkins Jr. wasn't afraid to, if you want to use the phrase name names, he wasn't afraid to say who some of the top targets were when he was asked. Caden Durham, David Stone, Bryant Wesco, and Max Anderson were the 4 names that Michael Hawkins Jr. quickly when asked, hey, who do you want to try to start swaying to join you in this class? Those are 4 big names that Michael Hawkins Jr. wants to go make a run at, and probably because he's willing to name those names, John, not that necessarily it's a guarantee you're getting all of those guys, but I think that putting the tea leaves together, connecting the dots a little bit myself, John, probably Michael Hawkins Jr. feels like there's a chance with each of those 4 guys for Oklahoma. So no, it's huge. It's news that we thought was going to happen at some point. Now it has happened with Michael Hawkins Jr. And I don't know how much you got to watch or listen to the show, John, but I just think it's a great story. At times I really enjoy the and I think it's okay to stop and smell the roses and enjoy it a little bit as an Oklahoma fan. I mean, we're always, what's next? Or, okay, so where's the class at and who else is coming into the class? Well, every once in a while, I think it's okay to look at and say, here's a legacy kid in Michael Hawkins Jr. It was an emotional thing for Michael Hawkins' dad, just for them to get the offer from Oklahoma. Now they get the offer. Then you get a little bit further down the road, and obviously all roads are paved in crimson and cream when it's all said and done. He winds up at Oklahoma. So I just think it's a cool commitment that Oklahoma has earned, and somebody that really values the commitment, John, which would tell me probably this is the type of commitment that we don't look up 2-3 months from now and all of a sudden he's shifted his attention elsewhere and he's decommitted and looking at other avenues. I think this is going to be a very, very solid commitment. I think this one, basically you almost wrap it up, throw it away, and you keep recruiting everybody, John. But I think you feel pretty confident in this one that you probably got a signing now in the 2024 class, and he's going to get to work trying to bring in some talent with him for you now.
And if you haven't had a chance to read Parker Thune's article over at OU Insider, fantastic read that really lays out just the progression of his recruitment, what it took to get the offer from Jeff Lebby and the Sooners, what it meant to get the offer, like how important it was to Michael Hawkins, not just the dad, but to the kid, the player himself, how much he wanted to get that offer from Oklahoma and how much he wanted to play for Oklahoma. So go check that out. OU Insider 247 Sports, Parker Thune. Again, a fantastic, biography really on the Michael Hawkins recruitment. I think he did a fantastic job, just a great read. And I think it fully signifies what Josh just said, that this is one of those commitments that you can feel lock solid about, like write it in stone, engrave it, print it in 24-inch headlines. Like it's going to stay commitment, and there's going to be a signing. Like he's very well aware of the competition that's going to be in the quarterback room when he gets to Oklahoma. Like that's not going to be any surprise to him. And but as he told Parker, it's about competition, and Jeff Levy's not giving anything to anybody. And so everybody's got to come in and earn it. And he's not afraid of that. And you got to love that, right? Like, you talk about program guys and guys that aren't afraid of competition. Like, this guy just screams Brent Venables guy all over the field. Like, and so you love that. And then just the other aspect of this, it's the same thing we talked about with the Jackson Arnold commitment and how huge that was for Oklahoma, that they got a guy that committed and never once wavered. You got the same thing. So now Oklahoma can expend resources, expend time and energy recruiting the defensive line, recruiting the offensive line, making sure that they set this recruiting class up in such a way that come 25, 26, that this is the core of your team in the SEC, and they're helping you get back to the national championship level.
Well, and it's probably worth mentioning, John, just again, I mean, this is a blue chip quarterback, right? I mean, this is a big time get for Oklahoma. And, look, I basically spent 15 minutes talking about it yesterday that, well, maybe not 15 minutes, but I spent a good, what do they say on PTI? A good 5 minutes talking about, for Oklahoma, John, basically the biggest thing for me is, and we've known this, Oklahoma's going to recruit quarterbacks, man. They're going to recruit and they're going to sign quarterbacks. And I don't have to run down the full timeline again today like we did yesterday of since Jeff Levy got on campus. But this is just the latest feather in the cap. And, I saw there was one comment on YouTube. Oh, so what you're saying is he's a low 4-star. Well, okay. If that's how you choose to feel, I don't feel that way about Michael Hawkins Jr. I think this is an elite quarterback that Oklahoma has gone and landed. Kendall Briles felt that way. And if Kendall Briles feels that way, feel how we want to feel about Jeff Levy and what he is at Oklahoma. I also have a lot of respect for what some of these other coaches think, John, and what they've been able to accomplish. And I don't think Kendall Briles was just totally blowing smoke up Mike Sr.'s backside. I think that he genuinely, whether he 100% feels that way or feels like Michael Hawkins Jr. is one of the best in 2024, I believe that Kendall Briles feels that way. So Oklahoma's got another great quarterback. And hey, this is just what life's going to be like. This is just what life's going to be like in Norman, Oklahoma. Great quarterbacks coming to play here.
So before we move on, just on that point, I just want to read the list of offers that he has, during his recruiting cycle: Alabama, Arkansas, Cincinnati, when Luke Fickell was there, Michigan, Missouri, NC State, Nebraska, Penn State, SMU, TCU, Texas Tech, Virginia Tech. So like you're getting Alabama and a lot of really other like top 25 type programs recruiting this kid. That should tell you something, that he's a really good quarterback that a lot of programs would love to have as part of their 2024 recruiting class. But moving on, Josh, before we talk to you about FanDuel, coming up next, we're going to talk about just some takeaways from spring ball, what some of the coaches have had to say, what we think about some of the defensive line movement that's happening. First, we'll talk to you about FanDuel.
Grand slams, no hitters, double plays, they're back, baby. And there's no better place to get in on the Major League Baseball action, the MLB action there's no better place than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers, you can step on up to the plate, no sweat, first bet up to $1,000. Swing and a miss, strike one, strike two, you get another one. No sweat, first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. You might have seen this. You might have not seen this, John. One of the things that I thought was interesting was Jonah Laulu moving inside for Oklahoma. Scale of 1 to 10. What type of impact do you put this at for Oklahoma? Or how jarring was it for you? And then how impactful is it for you?
Not too surprising. He struck me as a guy when he came over from Hawaii that projected more as an inside guy, more as a 3-tech defensive tackle than as a defensive end. But in a 3-man front, he's very much the defensive end type, a 270, 280 pound guy. But that's a 5 technique. Somebody who's mostly there to be a run blocker. You're not really asking him to, or not run blocker, run defender. You're not really asking him to rush the passer a whole lot. Well, now it sounds like they're moving him fully inside. He's getting a lot of 3-tech reps, and he's going to play defensive tackle for the Sooners. And I like it. I like the motor that he plays with, and I like some of the physicality and agility that he plays with. We'll have to see how that kind of correlates to, actual football and an actual football game and during the season. But I think it's an intriguing move because you do have some need on the inside. Yeah, you addressed it a little bit with Jacob Lacey, with Davin Sears, but with Jalen Redmond heading off to the NFL, Jeffrey Johnson as well, you didn't really have a lot of experience coming back to fortify their defensive interior. And you needed help on the defensive interior. So if you need to move a guy with Jonah Laulu, if his skill set better suits him and the team to move inside, I think it's going to benefit both him and the Sooners defense. Todd Bates seemed really, really high on what he's done so far this offseason when he spoke to the media yesterday. And it seems like that's going to be a move that's going to benefit everybody, really.
And ultimately, this is what spring's for, right? If there's somebody that can shift around a little bit and you relocate them and then all of a sudden, boom, away we go, then now's the time, because you can't do this. Once you get to week 3, 4, or 5 of a college football season, you can, John, but I guess I say you can't do it because we don't see anybody do this. So once you get in season, the last thing coaches want to do is start tinkering a bunch with anything, really, game plans, on and on and on. I think sometimes coaches get maybe a little bit too married to the idea of we can't change, but definitely with personnel, you don't see a lot of that in season. So if Jonah Laulu can help you inside, like you said, I think you laid it out beautifully. Oklahoma has a strong need for playmakers on the interior right now. Really, they have a strong need for playmakers anywhere on the defensive front. But, if you feel confident that some of the other names, like it sounds like Rondell Bothroyd, right? That was a name that some kind of thought, okay, is he going to be an interior guy at Oklahoma? Well, sounds like, John, it's the opposite.
Yeah, when mentioned or when asked about him, Todd Bates basically said he's an edge guy. He lumped him and Trace Ford together. Now, does that mean that Bothroyd won't ever play inside? Probably not. He'll probably move inside in some pass rushing situations, but I think he's going to be one of your edge defenders, one of your defensive ends, especially. And Bates talked about this as well. He talked about how some of it could be matchup dependent. They might need, guys like Bothroyd to play inside against certain schemes and, to play outside against others. But I do think it's intriguing that they do have what seems like a bunch of guys that are kind of unknowns. That's kind of intriguing a little bit. And you're hoping that the competition level that you have is going to help everybody raise their game to a point that, okay, now we don't just have 1 or 2 guys that are 5-sack guys, but maybe we'll have 4 or 5 guys that are 5-sack guys. You might not have a 10-sack guy on this roster, except for maybe an R. Mason Thomas. I think he's kind of got that potential, but you might have a bunch of, a handful of 5-6 sack guys. Hopefully that's what you're hoping for, but they've got the depth, they've got the depth of talent that they could do that. It's just a matter of, will it come to fruition? That's still an area where I'm still not so sure. I feel confident with the depth that they've accumulated. It's just a matter of seeing it play out on the football field now.
Yeah. And, whether you got one guy that goes and gets you 15 or one guy that goes and gets you 12 or, whatever number it is that's double figures or close to, or you've got, one guy that gets you 8.5 sacks and then 3 or 4 guys that go out there and get you 5.5 to 6.5 sacks and a handful of TFLs. If you're getting consistent production, that's what we're looking for. And for Oklahoma, getting inside and outside production up front, which I don't know if consistently Oklahoma got that last season, especially not, we've detailed this a bunch. Once the non-conference season came to a close last year for Oklahoma, a bunch of things, as you know, did not go great the rest of the way. But one of those things was the pass sacking, the pass rush for Oklahoma was not nearly as good after you left Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, trying to get into the reasons of why that was the case beyond just simply you got to upgrade personnel. John, I don't know that the coaching staff necessarily has it totally figured out why that was the case, but it needs to be better for Oklahoma. inside to out across the board. If you can get, again, you don't have to have just one guy go get you 13 sacks. If you can just have consistent contributions across the board, would be better for Oklahoma than even honestly what they've had at times in the past, John, where you had an Eric Stryker that was kind of your lone pass rushing star, or an Obo Okoronkwo who was sort of your lone pass rushing star. And then, there's been other years where you had Ronnie Perkins and Jalen Redmond maybe kind of tag teaming the thing. That'd be better, right, if you've got at least two guys. But, I mean, there's been times where it's kind of been one guy for Oklahoma, and you'd rather have, 5, 6, 7 go get you 5 or you name it.
Yeah, they need depth, and they need to have waves of guys, because it is an up-tempo league. It is a league that's going to, put them to the test, and they're going to make them be on the field quite a bit. So you got to have waves of guys that can get after the passer. And that was kind of the issue. They, on 3rd and long, they just didn't have the juice to get off the field, to get pressure on the quarterback. Now, I do think, again, we're going to keep tooting the R. Mason Thomas horn, but I do think that that's going to be a guy that really moves the needle for this pass rush on 3rd and long situations, because he just flies off the edge for the Oklahoma Sooners. Another notable note, that's good, that came out of spring ball in the last week was what Bill Bedenbaugh had to say about one Tyler Guyton. He called him, and I quote, one of the most talented players he's ever seen. Let me find the exact quote here so I don't mess it up. Yeah, but he's got all the ability in the world. One of the most talented guys I've ever seen. And we've had some pretty talented guys come through here. So he was asked about how Tyler Guyton's improved since last season, and if he's matured, and Bedenbaugh said, yes, he's matured. But my expectations haven't changed. I have high expectations for him. And then went on to say this. And to me, that really struck me. Now, I kind of got through that interview like a week later than maybe most people did, but it really struck me like, okay, one of the most talented guys I've ever seen. And he's coached a lot of really good offensive linemen, Josh. We don't have to run down the list, but just that's pretty high praise for a guy that's got 5 starts under his belt.
It is, yeah. And, I think we've gotten a good peek of that at times, and really across the board. I think, pass protection, though maybe some of that you'd put on Dylan Gabriel in the Cheez-It Bowl, wasn't great. But, the run blocking, across the board, I think was ahead of schedule for Oklahoma in that bowl game versus Florida State. So there's been signs out there that maybe this thing's going to be further along quicker than maybe we would think going in. And that's terrific to hear about Tyler Guyton. I admittedly, it did make me think of how many years ago was it, or which year was it, when Bill Bedenbaugh was asked, how does this compare to the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line? And it was, it's really close in the preseason. And then it didn't wind up being that way at all. So I'm just hoping that this is not some sort of, usually when Bill Bedenbaugh is like, I don't want to say negative in the offseason, but less complimentary, it seems like historically that's worked out well for Oklahoma. So I'm a little leery of all these compliments right now that Bill Bedenbaugh is throwing out there. But jokes aside, man, I mean, obviously it's a good sign to hear that he feels that way about Tyler Guyton. And I don't know that it should be altogether super surprising. We've kind of heard some people say those sorts of things, that Tyler Guyton has the potential to be similar to both an Anton Harrison and a Wanye Morris, and perhaps, if things all come together the right way, maybe better than one of those two up front. And I think you've got somebody else in Walter Rouse that you want a big time offseason recruiting war for. And I think I've said in the past, John, that, when we look back on the totality of whatever 2023 turns into for Oklahoma, it might be that Walter Rouse transfer portal edition that ends up being as big or bigger than any of the other ones, if Oklahoma's back to that Joe Moore award type winning offensive line. And if a Guyton, combines with the Rouse, and all of a sudden you've got 2 tackles that are every bit as good, if not maybe better than what the tandem is that is an NFL tandem to be from last season in Anton Harrison and Wanye Morris.
They're going to need him to be, because it's hard to turn over your tackle positions and not experience some drop off. And given the fact that you don't have Marvin Mims, that Eric Gray is gone, that Braden Willis is gone, you need those guys to be at the same level. I mean, that's, again, a lot of pressure to try to replace a guy that's going to be a first-round draft pick in Anton Harrison, another guy who's going to be a top 150 pick in Wanye Morris. But those are the expectations at Oklahoma. Those are what you kind of sign up for when you decide to transfer to Oklahoma. Both Guyton and Walter Rouse, they chose to come play for the Sooners. They could have gone to play anywhere, but they chose the pressure. They chose the limelight. They chose the opportunity to be starters. Guyton, he's really come on strong. And Bedenbaugh mentioned it, like he's only been playing offensive line for like 3 or 4 years. Before that, he was a tight end. Before that, he was a defensive end. So he's still really, really young in his offensive line development. But the fact that he feels comfortable to say something of that nature about Tyler Guyton at this point in his career, I think it's encouraging. I'm going to take it as encouraging because he doesn't have to say that. He doesn't have to say anything. He can just, use the typical coach speak and talk about where he needs to get better and, the things that he's got to improve on, and he's progressing well and he's doing a really good job and all these things. But, we got to keep working at, in these areas, but to come out and say something like that, like that's a totally different level of, maybe it's just, he's just trying to put it out there in the atmosphere. Like, hey, Tyler Guyton, you're one of the best I've ever seen, to try and help him believe that he's one of the best he's ever seen. That's a thing. Like you speak confidently to the kids you coach and they can begin to believe it. But again, I think there's something to it. Again, we've seen glimpses, we've seen flashes. He was really good in his spot starts last year, gave a lot of people confidence for what they were going to see out of Tyler Guyton moving forward. So I think it's an encouraging sign that, the Bill Bedenbaugh sees that in Tyler Guyton, but not only that, but we've seen some evidence that he could be a really, really good offensive tackle.
I think you touched on something that is very, very important. And at times, maybe we don't think about. A lot of times we just take a comment, and while we dissect it left, right, up, down, and the other, we take a comment and almost don't maybe look at the comment the right way. This from Coach Bedenbaugh, it could be a little bit of politicking in the media to play to the personality of somebody like Tyler Guyton. You just don't know, John, what makes different players on a roster tick. And the great leaders in life, whether it's a coach, your boss at work, the great leaders and bosses find out, okay, this will work with one employee. This will work with one player. It might not work with another player. And maybe it is just exactly what you touched on, which is, I use the term politicking. That's probably not the right way to describe it. A little bit of media posturing to let Tyler Guyton know, no, you can be as good as any offensive tackle that I've coached here. And maybe Bill Bedenbaugh's onto the fact that this is a personality in Guyton that might need to have that positive reinforcement just kind of out there in that public forum. I don't know that to be true. That's just a little bit of a guess, but it could be something to that.
I mean, there's no telling. The proof will be in the pudding when we see Tyler Guyton take the field in the 2023 season and does so against, Big 12 competition. Again, that's kind of where I'm putting my measuring stick for this team, is when we start seeing them against the Big 12, because I thought a lot of really good things about this team in non-conference play in 2022, and they were not fulfilled in conference play. But I'm just going to leave us with one little nugget here about Tyler Guyton, and that's just this image if you're on the YouTube side of things. So if you're looking for Tyler Guyton on your screen here on YouTube, he's the one that looks like he does not belong, because he's literally 1.5 feet taller than everybody else in the picture. Literally built different. Like, this is a dude that just does not look like he should be playing football. He should be playing basketball somewhere, like Baby Shaq. Like, now he is 6'8", but dude, he just looks, I'm going to put it up there one more time. That's just a different looking dude. This is from Dylan Gabriel's, time when they took the offensive line group out to Red Rock Canyon restaurant, I guess, in Norman for a little good times. So anyway, that's our Tyler Guyton segment of the week. We'll have more on Tyler Guyton as we see more, but I think there's encouraging signs across the board. Again, it's going to come down to, what does this team look like in the fall, in particular against Cincinnati and the rest of the Big 12 when they come to play. Anything else you need to touch on tonight, Josh, before we get out of here?
I don't think so, man. I hope you're feeling better. If you missed it, John he's been under the weather these last couple of days. Not to mention he's been, having to travel while under the weather, which is no small feat. So I hope you're doing better, my friend. It's great to have you back. I sure missed you yesterday.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I always miss my opportunities to talk Oklahoma football. But thank you so much for filling in and carrying the show. Thanks everybody for being a part of the show and subscribing to the show over on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, we're free and available on all platforms. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners. Follow Josh at Josh on Ref and myself at John 9 Williams. You can also hear Josh on 94.7 The Ref in Norman from 9 to noon. And you can read my work covering the Sooners over at the Sooners Wire. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer Sooner.